Dushyant Dave, a senior advocate at the Supreme Court and a very well-known name in media circles. And today, of course, we're talking about the removal of Kiren Rijiju as the law minister. He was law minister for barely 2 years and was unceremoniously removed on Thursday morning. It was just a one-line missive from the Rashtrapati Bhavan naming Arjun Meghwal, who has taken over as additional charge. Mr. Dave, welcome to The Print. And my first question to you is, why do you think Kiren Rijiju was removed?
Well, it's not easy to, speculate. There could be multiple reasons why Mr. Rijiju has been removed out of Ministry of Law and put in some, obscure ministry.
Earth Sciences.
Obscure ministry. But I think perhaps I would put it this way, that it is a very good signal that the Prime Minister has sent, because perhaps the Prime Minister realized that a better coordination between the executive and judiciary is the call of the day. And that was seriously being affected while Law Minister Mr. Rijiju was in office. So I think it's something which is very, I would say, a great pointer towards the Prime Minister's renewed efforts, to have better relationship with judiciary. Coming as it does, it is also very, I would say, interesting to note that 6 Chief Justices since Prime Minister took over after Chief Justice Thakur retired were virtually, I would say, pliable and were willing to, dance to the tune of the executive. The current Chief Justice Chandrachud, is not willing to do so. He has shown his independence on many issues, in recent past. And perhaps this may be a realization on the part of the government that it is better to have better relationship, with the judiciary, so that, the executive can, do its work without being hindered by the judiciary, or with the support of the judiciary.
Okay, you've said many things, Mr. Dave. Let me. I'm sorry to interrupt, but you've said many things. Some of them very interesting. You're calling former Chief Justices of the Supreme Court of India pliable. 6 former Chief Justices. That's a big accusation.
Well, it's not an accusation. You can see, for example, take Chief Justice Gogoi. He was completely compromised when the serious charges of sexual harassment were leveled against him. I mean, in any other country, he would have been removed for asking. But he was continued. And everybody knows that the executive at the highest level supported him. And so did, unfortunately, many judges of the Supreme Court.
So you believe those charges of sexual harassment?
Very serious charges. But as a result, the government got fantastic judgments in Ayodhya, in CBI director's removal in the middle of the night, Rafael case, and many other cases. See, what has really happened, and this is what nation must know, that during the tenure of these 6 Chief Justices, the appointments of High Court judges, especially across the country, have been very seriously question marks. Because the collegium is supposed to recommend them, but the collegium after collegium under the leadership of these Chief Justices perhaps were compelled by the executive to recommend people who didn't deserve to be appointed and who had certain ideologies. Now, this is a very, very, I would say, alarming situation, because we cannot have judges in high courts who have ideologies. Their ideology should only be Constitution of India and justice. So this is and you will see in coming years what, damaging effect it is going to produce on citizens. Because, one of the things which is most crucial for today's India is delivery of justice. People are being denied justice.
Okay, and let's come back to the Kiren Rijiju question. You said Kiren Rijiju was removed for several reasons, one of them being that, and you were applauding Prime Minister Narendra Modi for his renewed efforts in making good with the judiciary. Am I correct in understanding?
Yes, absolutely.
Let me just bring you back to the remarks that Mr. Rijiju made at the India Today conclave just very recently in May, when he said that some of the judges or some of the justices could be part of an anti-India gang. Now, that was quite a serious thing to say, wouldn't you agree?
He said in respect of retired judges, as I understand. Yes. But it was an absolutely unfortunate statement coming as it did from, a law minister. Because not a single retired judge of the Supreme Court can be, said to be anti-India.
Why do you think he said that? Why do you think Mr. Rijiju made that?
Well, he doesn't want these retired judges to, have a voice. These judges are a voice against, oppression, the failure of the justice system in which they were parties themselves. But they are seriously worried about, justice not being available, to large section of the society, especially vulnerable sections and the minority communities. And, the kind of situation which is emerging today in the country is perhaps extremely, I would say, extremely serious. And sooner the executive at the level of Prime Minister and the Chief Justice General should realize and act upon it, we are going to have a very, very bad situation in terms of human rights and in terms of civil liberties of citizens.
So that was one, that he made this comment of retired judges and former judges being part of an anti-India gang, or some of them at least. And the other is this collision that you see on a daily basis between the government and the higher judiciary, the Supreme Court, namely over the appointment of judges, which the collegium or a group of judges at the Supreme Court recommend. They recommend senior judges to the Supreme Court of India, and those have been held up by the government. Do you think that Mr. Rijiju's removal had something to do with that?
Yes and no. I mean, I think the delays in clearing the files sent by the collegiums is not at the level of Mr. Rijiju. It is at the level of the Honorable Prime Minister, his PMO, and definitely at the level of Honorable Home Minister. These are the people who are, calling shots today. And therefore, Rijiju was a very small player in that decision-making process. It is unfortunate that the government expects collegium to only recommend those names which are acceptable to the executive and not clear the names which are perceived to be independent judges. So that's a separate issue. I would say it reflects very poorly on Honorable Prime Minister, who has been claiming time and again that he wants a strong and vibrant democracy. You cannot have strong and vibrant democracy unless you have fiercely independent judiciary. So I think that's something which we, as a nation must introspect very seriously.
So then what are these renewed efforts that you're talking about on behalf of the Prime Minister?
See, I look at it this way, that, today, for example, if there is one area, forget, infrastructure development, economy, poverty, unemployment, these are issues which politicians can handle. But there is one area which is seriously plaguing this country. It is, the functioning of the legal system and its inability to deliver justice to the needy. Justice today is not available on a balanced basis. There is serious discrimination in delivery of justice system, and the rich and the powerful get away getting justice, while the poor who have no access to top lawyers or to the system as it plays out, they are really suffering very, very badly. And this is where, state has, for example, Article 39, capital A of the Constitution of India, although it's a directive principle, but it says that states shall secure a legal system which affords justice to one and all. And therefore,
what has this got to do with the renewed efforts that the Prime Minister of India is making, in your view, to reconcile with the higher judiciary?
See, I look at it this way, that, take, for example, appointment of Mr. Meghwal. Now, he is a very well-known, Dalit leader. He is a very, very responsible and a sober leader. Everybody knows that. Appointment of a man like that in just, law ministry will bring some kind of sensitivity which is required at the law ministry level. And that was singularly missing when Mr. Rijiju, or for that matter, when Mr. Ravi Shankar Prasad were in office. I think it's a very strong signal Prime Minister has sent. He has sent a Dalit leader, and who is generally respected by one and all. So I think it's something very interesting, I would say.
Okay, I'm going to ask you to hold on to that thought, and also say here that on the same day that Mr. Rijiju was removed, SP Baghel, the Minister of State for Law and Justice, was also removed, and he has also been sent to the Health and Family Welfare Ministry. Mr. Baghel, at an RSS function earlier this month, had the following things to say. He said, "Tolerant Muslims can be counted on fingers. Their numbers are not even in thousands. Even that is a tactic. It is to stay in public life with a mask." Now, that, would you say, was pretty much out of line, wasn't it?
It certainly was, but he's not in isolation. As I look at it, frankly, honestly, and I'm sorry to say that, I feel sad to say that, but I feel as an independent observer that targeting the minorities, appears to be an instrument of state policy today. And it is particularly very, severely, used in BJP-ruled states. I don't know whether you have had a chance to see my personal letter, which I addressed to the Honorable Prime Minister, which the Hindu, had carried it on its portal. There I had given instances of, bizarre instances, how, Christians and Muslims are being targeted and how judicial system is failing to protect them. And these targets are so well orchestrated that there is no doubt that the executive at every level, from the lowest to the highest level, is involved in either, actively participating or, just ignoring what is happening in their states. So I think that this is where Prime Minister must perhaps, he has said.
And yet Mr. Baghel was removed. So that is another example of...
Not only he was removed, but as you have seen from time to time, Prime Minister's constituency comes from extreme right-wing supporters. But yet, from time to time, he does make statements, to give a message to them. For example, before the release of the film Pathan, he did call upon, the cadres not to disrupt the screening of these films, because earlier Amir Khan's film had failed, etc. So, and Bollywood is one of the biggest employers and entertainers in the country. So I think Prime Minister tries it, but he knows his support base comes from these people, and therefore beyond a point he can't really intervene. And RSS, which is, I do not agree with RSS, but I think that RSS is a very, very responsible and a very much needed social organization for our country to really uplift our morals. But RSS should realize that you cannot do away with the minorities. You have to bring them in the main fold. It's something, social and economic backwardness of Muslims is leading to several problems for the community. That we have to realize, and unless we realize and try and remove these challenges for them, they will not be able to bring them into main, stream of the society. If you don't bring them, look at Israel today. Can anybody say Israelis are living in peace?
So I'm going to ask you another question, Mr. Dave. Now, this is something that I'm saying, and I'm just wondering aloud. I'm speaking aloud, which is that Mr. Rijiju is from Arunachal Pradesh. He's a 3-time MP. He has been voted to the Lok Sabha 3 times, which means that, and this is before he became a minister. But the Northeast today that we see, and the Northeast, of course, is a very, very large region. Arunachal Pradesh is totally separate from Manipur, Mizoram, and the other 7 sisters. But let me bring your attention to Manipur. Manipur has been burning for the last 3 weeks. There have been ethnic riots between the Meiteis and the Kuki tribals. Do you think that at a time like this, when a representative of the Northeast in a very senior position in the Council of Ministers and the Prime Minister's Council of Ministers, Mr. Kiren Rijiju, was removed, do you think it sends a wrong signal to the Northeast, which is conflict-ridden and where there are several tensions right now?
No, I won't say that, although I have not seen this particular judgment, but that's now in challenge before the Supreme Court. But the High Court there took a particular view, giving reservation to certain set of people in the state. And that has resulted, we must realize that Northeast has been a challenge for 75 years. And the aspirations of the people we have not been able to meet. 1, 2, there are many tribes there. There are many religions there. And it is a very sensitive area for us politically. Extremely.
Why do you think the Manipur High Court, we're not casting aspersions on the judiciary or challenging their verdict, but do you think that the Manipur High Court should have made comments like this, although the matter, like you said,
well, Chief Justice of India himself has, seriously expressed reservation about that judgment. And if the courts were to start, giving reservation in this fashion, then sometimes it does create a problem, because reservation is a very serious political exercise. And unless that exercise is carried on at a grassroots level, I think courts shouldn't jump into it. And courts generally stay away from them. They always say that, look, there must be data available, empirical data in all these issues. So perhaps the High Court jumped the gun and took the decision. I'm sure the Supreme Court will correct the situation, but damage has been done. The loss of lives and property and the division in the society now becomes very difficult to bridge.
That's
What
right.
happens is, so I feel that perhaps Mr. Rijiju will now find time to go to, Northeast and try and heal the wounds which have been, created because of these kind of situations.
But like you said, the matter is before the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court is taking a stern view on this. But can I bring you back to this perception, at least, that we have amongst the public at large, that there is a collision between the senior judiciary and the government? Am I correct in my perception? Do you think that, or would you like to sort of correct it in some way?
Well, if the collusion is there, yes, in the sense that, for a long time, politicians, whether under Congress or Janata Dal or BJP, all the politicians generally like to have their own nominees on the higher judiciary. And when the judiciary, recommends independent people, the politicians are not very happy about it. I'm sure it happened during Congress period, and it has been happening during the BJP period. Some of the finest judges, like Justice Jayant Patel, Justice Akhil Qureshi from Gujarat, Justice Murlidhar from Delhi High Court, who is now Chief Justice of Orissa, they have been singularly, neglected. And I must say that the judiciary is as much party and responsible for injustices to them as the executive is, because judiciary didn't stand up for them. So yes, you must realize that every prime minister, like Mrs. Gandhi was, and as Mr. Modi is now, they are very strong prime ministers. And they always believe that the direction that they are wanting to give to the country is the right direction. And if anybody tries to, raise questions about that direction, then I think they are unacceptable, which is fair enough. It happens, that's human. But I feel that as a prime minister, prime minister who has a big role to play in years to come, Mr. Modi should allow a very fiercely independent judiciary, because today you are targeting one section of society, tomorrow the turn may come on us. And we may be targeted. So I think it's something which every politician must view very seriously.
But Mr. Rijiju also said, and I'm bringing up the matter of the collegium, and he said the government cannot accept the recommendations of the collegium blindly. Now he has a point, doesn't he? Which is that the government of the day is an elected government. They take the interests of the public at large. Of course, there is a separation of powers, checks and balances. But what do you make of this point? Do you think that he was speaking on behalf of the government when he says that we cannot take the recommendations of the collegium 100%?
No, I think he is wrong, completely wrong. I have personally been against collegium system. I have argued also to that effect when NJSC was heard. But having said that, let me say, today there is a binding judgment of the Supreme Court, which says that this is how the appointments will be made. And the judgment says that once the collegium makes a recommendation, unless you have compelling reasons, which you must put it on the files and return the file to the collegium for reconsideration, you cannot stop recommendations made by the collegium. And once collegium reiterates that request, you are bound to appoint those nominees. Now, this is the law of the land. By virtue of Article 141 read with 144, everybody, including the executive at the highest level, is bound by this judgment. And the law minister of all should have known this legal position. So I don't think he has any business to comment. They made an effort to upset the collegium decision of the Supreme Court by bringing NJSC. They failed. After that, Parliament has not brought another law. Now, therefore, this judgment is holding the field, right or wrong. If you don't implement the judgment, that means you are committing contempt of the Supreme Court. And that is a very, very serious situation. So I think the comments that the law minister was making were horrendous. It didn't befit the office of a law minister to make public comments like that against the collegium system or the judges of the Supreme Court.
Do you think he was speaking on his own behalf, or do you think he was speaking on behalf of the government? Sort of he was airing the view, basically a test balloon.
Everybody knows in this country that in this government, nobody can speak unless he is expressly or authorized by the Prime Minister himself. Nobody has a voice. No minister can speak up. So if he did speak up, perhaps he had some tacit support from the Prime Minister, or maybe the PMO, or maybe the party at the highest level. And if Prime Minister felt that his minister was crossing the Lakshman Rekha, Prime Minister should have publicly ticked him off. So that didn't happen.
He didn't do that, right?
Yeah, he didn't do that. So I feel that, yes, they may have tried to test the waters, on a political level, that let's try and confront the judiciary publicly. They perhaps didn't realize that the mood of the nation is with judiciary. And there was a serious, I would say, backlash against the executive and the minister in public at large. They really, people, I mean, wherever I went across the country, people walked up to me and said, what is this nonsense happening? Why is the executive trying to take on the judiciary in this, rather crude manner? And I had to explain to them that perhaps this is part of their agenda to undermine. You see, the whole attempt today is what? There is a fear factor which is working in the country. And it has also seriously inflicted the judiciary. I can share with you that judiciary at the lower level and the high court level is seriously, I would say, seriously worried about its own existence. And therefore, the judges are not willing to give justice, even when they are convinced personally that, yes, in this given case before me, justice must be done. But, there is a constant fear of the CBI, the ED, all kinds of authorities, political transfers, this, that. And sadly,
so judges are afraid.
Sadly, just a sec. Sadly, the Supreme Court at the highest level doesn't protect these judges. They must go out of their way to protect these judges who want to give independent justice. I think the collegium members have a duty to travel across. Chief Justice has been trying again and again. He said, in fact, when he took over, that bail must be granted. I am shocked why bail is not being granted. But day in and day out, there are something like 4.5 lakh under trial prisoners today in our jails. And I would definitely confidently say, without looking at their files, that 75% of them deserve to be set off on bail straight away. But the higher judiciary doesn't do anything about it. So I think judges can't just, get away by saying executive is irresponsible. I would say judges have a great responsibility under the Constitution. They are supposed to protect the citizens. They alone are custodian of fundamental rights of citizens.
And I will say here, Mr. Dave, that Siddiq Kappan, a journalist who has been in jail. He has now been in jail for 2 years for absolutely no fault of his. He was completely innocent. He was going to do his job to report the rape case of this young girl a couple of years ago. And he has been very, very damaged by his incarceration in prison. So, and like you said, there must be thousands and thousands of people like this.
They take, for example, now this Shah Rukh Khan's son's case. The officer who carried out that exercise of his arrest has now been found to be, involved in corruption. Now he has been suspended. Why doesn't the judiciary suspend the judges before whom this young man was produced, who gave remand, refused bail to him? I think, judges must start sending a powerful message and suspend these kind of judges who don't even know basic constitution. Right to life and liberty is so sacrosanct that unless you have convincing proof against somebody, you can't just send them to a police remand. I know of a case which I have mentioned in my letter to the Honorable Prime Minister. A 23-year-old intern was picked up in front of a judge in Indore, taken to police and arrested for no offense whatsoever. 54 days she spent time in jail. Who is going to give her life back?
So why are the judges so afraid, Mr. Dave? Why are they making these? Do you think it's deliberate? Do you think that they don't? I mean, they obviously know the law, otherwise they would be there in these positions. But what are they afraid of?
I don't know why people are afraid in this country. I think one of the things that has happened since this government came, and as it happened during emergency, that our power of reasoning and our courage has somehow been taken away from us. And it is affecting us at so many levels. Across the society, you look at even civil society. How many people in civil society are willing to stand up today? Look at Israel. Netanyahu's legal reforms are being resisted by thousands and thousands and thousands of people for last 2 months running. Look at that. And Israel is strong religious society. Yet people are willing to stand up and say, no, you will not tinker with judiciary. We want an independent judiciary.
And yet you say, Mr. Dave, that the Prime Minister is making renewed efforts by sacking Kiren Rijiju and moving SP Baghel in sort of making an outreach to the higher judiciary.
Look, I mean, I have disagreed with the Honorable Prime Minister for almost 22 years now. I mean, on many things. I have personal respect for the Prime Minister, and I'm sure he has some kind of a warmth towards me. We knew each other once upon a time quite well. I feel that despite all my reservations, that Prime Minister is in a position to do tremendous good to this country. We need it. We need it very badly. We are a fractured society today. We need to heal the wounds. We have almost 75 crore people who are living below poverty line. If this Prime Minister fails, believe you me, we are heading for anarchy. And we don't want that situation.
But you feel that he is making these renewed efforts?
Well, I still have not lost hopes in him, although I disagree with the Prime Minister's many policies and actions. But I still, hope. I try and appeal to him all the time that please, rethink. He should particularly look at this enforcement directorate. The kind of things which are happening is unacceptable. Prime Minister should intervene.
And do you think this is happening in the wake of the Karnataka elections, which the BJP?
No, it is happening across. Now it's become so omnipresent that you really wonder that are these agencies, unfortunately, these Frankensteins were created by the Congress government. Whether it is NIA, whether this, Unlawful Prevention Act, or whether this Money Laundering Act, these are all gifts from the Congress government to the nation. Okay. Yes. This government is only, making the best use of it. So I think we are a very, I would say, very immature society politically and socially. We have to mature ourselves that we cannot allow this kind of draconian powers because we don't have good people to exercise these draconian powers. We don't have responsible people. Unless we can man these agencies with most responsible people. And the fact that Mr. Mishra, ED director, has been continued again and again and again, it's only to, for the benefit of the Bharatiya Janata Party. Nothing else. I mean, there can't be any other opinion about it.
Right. So, Mr. Dave, the last question.
He's not God's gift to mankind. Civil services have outstanding officers.
Right. So let me ask you the last couple of questions. The Chief Justice of India, Mr. Chandrachud, do you think that this outreach, that these renewed efforts that you believe that the Prime Minister is making towards the senior judiciary, towards not just the Chief Justice of India, but also to the entire Supreme Court. Now, do you think that this will be reciprocated by the Supreme Court? Because the Chief Justice has had very critical comments about the government in recent days and weeks.
No, I personally would not agree with you. Chief Justice has been extraordinarily responsible. Look at his judicial approach. If he can, strike down, Lieutenant Governor's role in Delhi, he is unwilling to remove the government in Maharashtra, although he comes to conclusion that the governor, speaker, and the whip all acted unconstitutionally. Right. He is trying to balance. He is trying to go exactly as per law. He is responsible. Look, Chandrachud is an intellectual giant. I mean, there are very few judges in this country who are comparable to him. He is making an effort. He is, very ably assisted by some of the outstanding judges that he has in his collegium, particularly Justice Sanjay Kishan Kaul and Justice Joseph, who's retiring soon. These are very, very outstanding judges. And now Justice Khanna has come into, collegium. He's also a fiercely independent and an honest judge. So I think these senior judges, to my mind, have a great responsibility. Chandrachud is trying to do a lot. My own take is, I feel sad that Chief Justice and his senior colleagues are not traveling across the country to meet judges, to meet litigants, to meet lawyers, to find out what is ailing the legal system. It's fine to go and, give lectures and speak about constitution and fundamental rights and, basic human rights. Fine enough. You can do that. But beyond that, there are no serious efforts being made by these judges. And I would appeal to them that they should really take time to visit every high court, if possible, as many district courts as possible. Meet the stakeholders, understand the problems, enthuse the lower judiciary, tell them to become fiercely independent. Justice and justice alone should be, the aim, and constitution alone should be the religion of judiciary.
Absolutely.
It should not be influenced by any other religion. So these efforts, unfortunately, are singularly wanting. And that's where I feel extremely sad that a man with such a large vision that Chandrachud is, he is not able to see that.
Well, Dushyant Dave, thank you so much for speaking so freely and frankly. And I hope that your message will be carried not just to the Chief Justice, Mr. Chandrachud, and to the higher judiciary, but I'm sure that somebody will also carry your message to Prime Minister Modi and appreciate the fact that he is making renewed efforts towards the higher judiciary. And one of them is the removal of the outgoing Law Minister Kiren Rijiju.
I can only say in the end that, like most Indians, I love my country the most. And I pray, I have 4 lovely grandchildren, and I pray that the future generation, we have responsibility towards them.
Well, we only have one country, Mr. Dave, so I think...
we are failing in our responsibility. We have to give our future generation a nation which is built on strong constitutional principles. Unless we do that, we will be doing a great disservice. History will condemn us.
Thank you so much for your time. Thank you.
Thank you very much.